Hello world and welcome to episode 21 of the Top Split. I'm your host Alex McKellar and today I'm joined by one of the Top Split TV commentary team, the chaotic one himself, Mr. Corey Steinhauser. Welcome aboard, Corey.
G'day Alex, how you doing today, mate?
Yeah, all right. It's public holiday, so I'm doing very well, mate. What about yourself?
Oh yeah, not too bad. We had our public holiday last week.
Yeah, nice. It's a bit different everywhere around this joint. So I've invited Corey on the show today because we're going to talk all things Sunday Night Lights with a bit of a season wrap-up of season 16, which of course it's the 16th season of the ANZ Skip Barber soft race, but it represents our first season after moving to Sunday nights. A big shout out to Simon Chambers as well. He was the organiser of the Australasian Super Skips, and I spoke with him at length around the move to Sunday nights because he, of course, ran it all on a Sunday night, but agreed that he'd be able to move in a different direction and free up the Sunday nights for us, which really opened the doors to what was our biggest season. And for me, it was a big success in that move, and we'll get into that a bit more, no doubt, Corey. But this was your first season in the Top Split TV commentary booth. You're no stranger doing a bit of race commentary, but how was the SNL experience for you?
Well, it was a lot different to my normal commentary duties, Alex. Normally I commentate on a oval league, so it's always trying to make the commentary as exciting as possible for drivers going around in ovals. I was almost going to say circles, but people find that very offensive. So yeah, it was a big change for me, and a big change for me not being in control of said broadcast. But it was very enjoyable nonetheless.
Yeah, glad to hear it, mate. Look, I enjoyed the season too. Certainly enjoyed having you in the booth. We also had the doctor, Alex John, early on in the season with One Nut. Tim Gorkrocher and yourself for the remainder of the season, along with me, of course. I have to say thank you to the three of you, along with our absent friend, the Golden Stig, Tim Awema, who, between all of us, you've helped me keep the broadcast going, and, without whom, well, be stuck with me flying solo doing the broadcast. But on the whole, I thought the move to Sunday was a big success. I had goals of building on the Monday night crew of regulars and enabling some of the stronger overseas drivers, or some more of the stronger overseas drivers, I should say, a window of opportunity to race with us and help strengthen the fields and give the ANZ guys a chance to race some of the best in the world in a time zone that was achievable for us, because it's not often that happens. And certainly from that perspective, even with, the kerfuffle around the new tyre model last season, the Sunday Night Lights race itself, along with a warm-up race leading into it, were the strongest fields each week. So from my perspective, Corey, that was a goal that we certainly achieved.
And I would certainly have to agree with that. I was a part of several of the lower split races last season, and even though the strength of the field was up compared to what we'd normally have throughout the week, it wasn't to the heights of what we were able to manage to get this season. And it was pretty incredible to see the strength of field numbers on some of these races, up in the 42, 43, 4400 range. I mean, that's crazy. I've never commentated on such an incredible strength of field before.
Yeah, massive for us. It was a big improvement. And certainly, even with some of the top end of town missing this season, it was, like I said, our most successful from that point of view as well. I was also really pleased that some of the guys who've supported the broadcast in as part of the Top Split community, who do live overseas and hadn't been able to race with us regularly because of the time difference on a Monday night, they were able to join in. Most obviously, I guess, were our Flying Finns, who topped the Pops by season's end, and the new working man, Mr. Grebstad, who had been able to race on Mondays while he was a student, but when he put his big boy pants on and entered the workforce, he was relegated to the sidelines. So for folks like that, and some of our new regular SNL family from overseas, I was really happy to share our ANZ platform with them.
Yeah, and another thing that I found to be a big advantage to us moving to the Sunday nights is that the time difference just between you and myself as well, Alex. Some of the Western Australian contingent might not have necessarily been able to compete in SNL, especially during daylight savings, because as a lot of people in Australia know, but maybe not so much of the international audience, Western Australia doesn't have daylight savings. So when you guys over the east side go to daylight savings, it's a 3-hour gap. And that's generally when people over here in the west are, having dinner or coming home from work. So I think even in just that standpoint for the locality of us in Australia, the move to Sunday night was a great success.
Yeah, mate. Well, that's right. I mean, it did open the doors for some of the WA contingent, as you say, and that was an added benefit, of course. But what it did mean, though, was that there was some stiff competition out on track for our local boys, for the familiar faces, like Ben Snell and John Scholz. So, now here's the thing. I know he's an expat South African, but I know that a lot of them live in Western Australia. I thought he lived there for a while. I think he might have moved. I can't remember, but it certainly would have helped him, assuming he's still in WA. But also for the stiff competition for people like them, and also for the new folks like Greg Barber, for example, who joined us this season. The influx of the overseas drivers meant that it means that they'll really need to step up their game in the coming season as well, because typically we've had a handful of guys like the Team Ivano boys in Enzo Cantor and Fahim Antoniades, and they've joined us historically and showed their class out on the track. But with the move to Sunday, despite some of the elite taking that break for the season, as we mentioned, the top of the table was dominated by overseas talent, with Ben Snell leading the way for the local boys all the way down in 8th position, Corey.
Yeah, and it was great to see, such an international presence, and our boys actually stepping up and taking the challenge to these higher rated international drivers, Alex. I'm just having a quick little look through my cheat sheet here, and a couple of times our Aussies actually managed to get on top and get wins, which, considering the strength of fields that we were dealing with in this season, is actually really awesome. Like Gorkrotcher, one of the best skippy drivers we have here in Australia. He managed to get up and get a win at Road America, and you know he was a dominant force in that race.
Timmy G, of course, he had an undoing moment at Interlagos during the season, and he spent some time in the booth, of course, as well, which saw him not as frequently on the track as perhaps he might have liked. But certainly the local folks, if they want to compete on this new platform, will really need to take the revamped Skippy this season by the horns, so we can, maybe puff our chests out a bit more. Although with the hype over the updated tyre model and how the Skippy is driving this week in week 13, who knows what sort of fields we could be seeing in the coming season, looking to take on our strongest local drivers, Corey.
And that's the thing we've got to wait and see, Alex, because with the change in the tyre model, we could start to see some of that contingent that we used to have before this season's tyre model came out return to us, and try and mix it up with some of the new faces that we've come to know and love throughout this SNL season.
Yeah, mate, that's the way I kind of see it as well. I'm kind of imagining bumper crops of overseas drivers and some of the local guys really getting to rub shoulders with Skippy royalty, as it were. But turning our eyes to the outcomes of this season, we saw Smurfing Sammy J. Toykala. He took our top spot on the podium from his Finnish compatriot Timo Vaskalampi. And newcomer to the series, Sasha Gourlay, He took out third in his maiden SNL series. Toy Carla took out an amazing 5 races during the season, although 2 of which were in the second split as he built up enough rating to crack it into the highest soft races each Sunday night. Before later on in the season, he took out 3 of the broadcast SNL races in the top split. A fantastic effort from our series champion, Corey.
Yeah, indeed, Alex, but it wasn't without its controversies, as what will be well etched into everyone's minds, the final corner of the final lap there at Monza. Um, for the lack of a better term, I think the term that you used during the broadcast was probably the perfect way to describe it. He had the biggest brain snap going into that final corner, and it was definitely very controversial, Alex.
Yeah,
And
mate. Sorry, I was going to say, how could we forget that final race of the season? I thought Cristobal Terraman was going to take out his maiden Sunday Night Lights victory, leading a pack of 5 cars out of Ascari on the final lap at Monza. Before Sammy, he went for a gap that wasn't quite there, and he took out Rahman, Tim Hendrickson as well before rejoining the track and taking out his good mate Timo Vascalampi as well, leaving Sebastian Schultz to come through and take out his first SNL win instead. A crazy finish to what was an outstanding race scoring.
yeah, indeed, and I must give props to Vascalampi with that one, because even though he did get taken out at the final part of that final corner, he actually managed to come across in 4th place at the end there, securing his 2nd place finish, although he wasn't really in threat because Sasha Gole didn't turn up to Monza. But what an exciting race Monza was. I mean, everyone was definitely on point with the way that they knew how to handle the cars, and they waited to the last lap to have all of their brain farts.
Well, it was all on the line at that point. But well, also in terms of top split wins, Sammy was matched by Sasha Gourlay, who managed 3 in the big show this season, and so I imagine he'll be one to watch in the coming season. I had the opportunity to interact with him a bit during the season, the proud Belgian. And look, depending on who rocks up with the new Skippy, Sash will be right up there with the best of them, no doubt. But results going his way, of course. Gourlay, like Vascalampi, each had their chance to take out the championship in that last race. Mathematically it was most definitely possible. But it was, as we said, that incident, and it was Torcala taking the chocolates in the end. But notable mention, of course, to Håkon Grebstad, who was the only other driver to take out 2 top split races this season, and helped him take out P4 on the SNL table overall. And also to Greg Barber, who managed to take out 2 second split races before he secured his his spot in the grid for the broadcast races later in the season. I understand he's a bit of an old hand at sim racing, but we've not seen him, I should say, on the SNL scene previously, and I'm tipping he'll be one to watch in the coming season, Corey.
Well, I hope so, Alex, because he is definitely one of the experienced hands, as you say. And when we saw him on track, he was always there or thereabouts, and he was very consistent with the way that he was finishing. So hopefully, with the new build, the new tire model that we're getting this season coming, hopefully he could probably try and use that to his advantage and get some better results, or at least try and keep up with that consistency. Maybe we'll see him further up the points at the end of the season there, Alex.
Yeah, mate. But like I said, he sort of cracked it for the regular seat in the top split towards the mid stages of the season, and it was a common story this season in drivers who were dropping in and out of the top split races, where previous series, they'd been certain starters. So with the move to Sunday nights, we also saw the highest average strength of field in these races since the start of the ANZ Skippy Soft races, which was way back, over 4 years ago now. We averaged over 4,000 for the entirety of the 12 weeks, which is a long way clear of any previous season that we've had. So it's another ringing endorsement for the move to Sunday nights. Indeed, I can remember seasons where I was stoked with a week or two in the 4,000s, but to average that over the season, well, it was extremely satisfying. And I tell you what, as I said before, with the hype I'm seeing around for the revamped Skippy, I reckon the sky's the limit this season, Corey.
And Alex, I believe we could probably see our first 5,000 strength of field race this season.
That'd be
I know
something.
I know it might be a bit of a far reach, but I honestly believe with the way that this new tire model is handling, we're going to see a lot of those old hands come back and even some brand new faces that we probably haven't seen that dropped off last season. And we could probably see our numbers reaching that high, which means that, the minimum IR that you would need to probably get into a race like that would be somewhere in the 3,500 to 4,000 range just to make top split. And that
Oh,
quality of field would be incredible.
that would be incredible. Well, we can only dream, mate. We'll see what we could do this season. I don't think we've ever cracked 5K, so well, we can only hope. It would be pretty good though. As I said though, it did mean that some of our regulars were sometimes in and out of the top split races. The likes of Kevin Henderson comes to mind. He's been there since day one, pretty much. John Scholz, even former series champion Luke Whitten found himself in the second split on more than one occasion, if I'm not mistaken. I know he's got other focuses at the moment, but he's a very strong driver, and I've seen him this week actually out and about, and he's certainly not lost any pace. For me, though, Corey, that adds a bit. The chance that you could miss out on the top split when, you're accustomed to just rocking up and making it, perhaps. For me, that adds a bit of extra incentive to it as well. The will I get in or won't I make it sort of thing. Added a bit of extra colour and excitement.
Well, that will just mean that the drivers who are accustomed to being there that might be a threat in the coming season really need to start stepping up their game and maybe participating in more races throughout the week. Because, we have some guys who just participate in the pre-race and then the broadcasted race. So this new time model coming in might usher a new era of where we see higher strength of fields throughout the week as everyone wants to try and get as much IR as they can to guarantee their spot in the top split broadcasted races now, Alex.
No, we can only hope. We can only hope. It also puts a little bit more meaning into a run in the top split. I mean, I know I was stoked when I saw Paul Beatty get his debut in the broadcast race at Bathurst this season, and I know firsthand that it meant a lot to him. He worked hard to get his I rating up and cracked it for a run, and he finished 11th, and in the Sunday Night Lights points that race, and I know he was grinning from ear to ear. And can I tell you, Corey, those are the experiences that give me the most satisfaction. We do this for love, not for money. There's no one knocking down my door with sponsorship dollars, although if there was, I'd certainly be opening the door. But for me, I get tremendous satisfaction from seeing the guys out on track, using the platform we've built, taking advantage of the high quality driving and putting on some fantastic displays of racing that we know this car can produce.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, Alex. And at the end of the day, that's what we love to see is the fantastic close battles that we have started to become accustomed to, especially throughout this season. I know there was a lot of drama with the tire model and even with the tire model in qualifying changing up to basically where you slide the tires too much, it became death and ruined your qualifying. But that also added an extra intriguing point of where some of the top guys might have been struggling a little bit in qualifying, such as Håkon Grebstad or even Enzo Cantor. He started at the back more times than I've got fingers on my hands almost, and he managed to work his way through the field, driving smart but aggressively, and he was up there in the points, there or thereabouts, almost every week, Alex.
Yeah, you're right. And those sort of drives are the most satisfying. I remember talking to Tim Gorkrocher after the Interlagos race. He was shattered by that, and because of the fact that he'd driven through the field so hard to get where he was. And that's another thing these big fields, these strong fields bring is that satisfaction of having done a good job and meeting a really significant challenge. And I love those individual stories like that of, Tim in that one, or Paul Beatty with his run at Bathurst, or John Scholz doing his sums each week in trying to take out the Division 2 championship. I can picture him, for example, cheering or being shattered depending on which split he landed into on a Sunday night. I love that we've built a strong following with some of the really great guys from overseas as well. We've got our Spanish Armada led by the likes of Cristobal Otero Roman, or the proud Belgian, as we said before, Sasha Gourlay, and my favourite Nihonjin, Toshimasa Hanada from Japan. I love also, we've got these guys like Mark Jeffrey and Simon Chambers and Ken Hyams who rock up each week in the second split, and they're having a crack at it. And enjoying their racing. And sometimes, with the numbers going their way, they get into the top split race, and they're racing with some of the best guys in the world. We've got all these stories. We've got the friendly rivalries, with guys like Team Milo and Team Ovaltine and Team Venom. All guys just looking to have some fun on track. And like I said, Corey, it's in us trying to build a platform for great racing each week with our little competition and our broadcast, and giving these guys an opportunity to race in quality fields that I get the most satisfaction from.
Yeah, and in saying that, Alex, we've also seen maybe some not so healthy rivalries develop as well. One that comes to mind, especially from Interlagos, is Sasha Gourlay and Enzo Cantor. We couldn't get them separated after that, and that incident that they had in turn 4 definitely sparked something in them. But I'm glad that they got their differences resolved by Bathurst. As you can see, when they pulled up first and second after the start finish line, they pulled up next to each other, and you could see that their issues were resolved. But that was an ongoing, a very emotional battle, and Enzo's a very emotional driver, and seeing him getting that riled up and upset, it really goes to speak to how much these drivers love racing in these races, Alex.
Yeah, it is, mate. It's and that ended up being. I think that was a friendly rivalry in the end. I know they had their moments in the heat of competition, and this is one thing. My commentary on racing incidents more broadly. I think I've got to say, 99% of racing incidents are just that. They're racing incidents. Nobody's intentionally out there. It's why when we see someone intentionally wrecking someone, it's just so shocking. And I think at the end of the day, those two are really competitive, really passionate about their racing. And, they were similar in pace this season a lot of the time. So they ended up on track together. It was, what's going to happen this week. But it all ended up well. And at the end of the day, I think they walked away with a healthy respect for each other. And that's another thing I really love. We've built an amazing community around this race. I feel like it means something to the guys that race with us each week. There's a real club spirit, almost a global club spirit that you see on and off the track. The racing is great, and I feel like the racing is uplifted both by the skill of the drivers and the respect that they have for each other, and the event each week. They have that respect for that event that we put on, Corey, and I really couldn't ask for more from that perspective.
Yeah, and it definitely showed with the racing, especially as I said, towards the end of the season. We saw a lot of good, hard, close battling. Like we had 3 wide finish at Barber Motorsports Park. Not a place where you would normally see that kind of a finish taking place. And it was one of the most incredible of last lap battles that I think I've ever seen there, Alex.
It was crazy, mate. That was the finish of the season for me at round 11. It was at Barber Motorsports Park. In fact, it was probably the best finish we've had in our history. You had Gourlay, O'Fray, and Katz. Such an amazing finish that started out of the hairpin at turn 5. Amazing side by side through the waterfall and onwards through the flat out fourth gear chicane. Then the lead changed 3 or 4 times in the closing sequence, and it looked like any three of them could take it out before Gourlay got it on the line, and there was less than 0.3 of a second covering all three of them. It was an outstanding driving, and absolutely the highlight of the season for me, Corey. Any other major moments come to mind by way of highlights?
Well, as far as highlights go, maybe not so much a highlight, but maybe a little bit of a low light. The start of Watkins Glen, we saw into the bus stop Anthony Cat just going for a big dive bomb up the inside and just getting it that little bit wrong. Just showing how difficult this tire model was on cold tires. Like I'm pretty sure with the old tires, if he went flying up the inside like that, he probably could have made it stick going through the bus stop, but he just misjudged it that little bit and sent it all wrong and went through the grass. And then after that, the race started to settle down a bit. But yeah, that was quite the incredible start to the race for that one, Alex.
Yeah, you're right, mate. Certainly put the cat amongst the pigeons, if you'll pardon the pun. But the other major moment that comes to mind for me, as you mentioned previously, final lap at Interlagos, Enzo Cantor. He looked like he was set to take out the race. That incident at turn four, it fueled that season-long rivalry between he and Gourlay, as you said, and it took them both out of contention, and where they were in P1 and 2 at the time, and that led to the lead pack, which we saw quite a few times this season. We had 5-6 cars deep, but it reduced that pack to four, who were in prime contention with our own Tim Gorkrocher on the front before Timo Vascalampi clipped his rear just three corners after that Cantor and Gourlay incident. And that left Hawkon and Smurf and Sammy J. Toykala to fight out for the win, and Toykala took it on the line. We've had some spectacular racing at Interlagos, but that was right up there with them, Corey.
Yeah, and Interlagos is always a track that provides some great excitement. As we already said, Enzo and Sasha with the round one of when they were button heads a little bit. But we also seen like a 9-car battle pack after 4 laps, and even a 6-car battle late in the race before that unfortunate incident. It was definitely one of the more competition-driven races that we had, and it was plain to see after the fact that everyone was really wanting to win that race, and that's why Enzo and Sacha probably got so emotional about the contact that they had, and even the incident between Vascalampi and Gorkrocher. You could see that they were both so bitterly disappointed after the fact, and it's just because they were fighting so hard, and no one wants to drive like that. Like no one wants to take someone out, and like especially in a top split race where you're all up at a certain level of competition where you expect everyone to not so much give you an inch, but maybe give you just a couple of millimeters and hope that you don't take it a mile. But it's all about the respect that the drivers have been showing each other all season. There's been a lot of respectful racing, and but it's at the same time it's still been good, hard, mostly clean racing, Alex.
Yeah, that's right, mate. I'd suggest it was all clean racing with just errors under pressure, causing a few incidents, I should say, throughout the season. But there were a ton of enjoyable moments, Corey. I know I had a blast throughout the season. Again, best of all, or most of all, I love being part of building a platform for ANZ Skippy Racing and just club-like racing in an entry-level category and encouraging some of that high-quality racing that we see in this category. It really showcasing why the Skippies remain one of the most popular categories on the iRacing service. We did build a platform, or we have over a number of seasons, for the best fields, and certainly this season they were the best fields anywhere around, as was evidenced also by the official series standings, where the top 6 drivers overall were Sunday Night Lights drivers. Timo Vascalampi did an amazing job. He parlayed his SNL races into his first official title. So congratulations to him. Smurf and Sammy J. Toykala not only took out the Division 4 championship, if you can believe it, hence his entry into the season in the second split for us. He did that by the length of the straight, but he also secured second position overall, with Håkon Grebstad taking out the final step on the official season podium. Then we saw Sebastian Schultz, Sasha Gourlay and Julian O'Fray round out the top 6, using their SNL results to good effect. And again, very satisfying for me personally that what we do on a Sunday night really did attract the best drivers this season, Corey. Very satisfying indeed.
And this is the aim that we've always had. It's to try and do that for not just our local Aussies, but just the iRacing community in general. We want to have this platform where we can have the best drivers in the world coming and competing week in, week out, battling hard, fast, and close. And as you said, the results speak for themselves with the way that everything ended out in the official championships. Um, Congratulations to all of our guys, by the way, for being absolutely dominant. It's just incredible to see the sheer skill that the drivers that we have attracted to this series have amassed themselves, Alex.
Absolutely. Look, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface on our SNL season, Corey. I could talk for hours about the series and the season in general. Any final thoughts on SNL before we move on, mate?
Well, I'm thinking we might have to actually revive your old egg and bacon award there, Alex.
Yeah.
You mentioned it to me when we were at Watkins that you had an egg and bacon award. I think we definitely have to award it this year to Mr. Kevin Henderson. Unfortunately, blowing up his engine at Summit Point and Watkins Glen. And I think he was the only driver to manage that as well. So, congratulations, Kevin. You've won yourself an egg and bakey.
Well, I did affectionately call it Hendo's Egg and Bacon Award for a reason, mate. And unfortunately, it caught him out again a couple of times this season. But Kevin is, and I often say, he's a stalwart of the ANZ soft skippy races, and that he is. He's been there right from the very beginning. So great to see him back out on track, and surely we'll see him there again this season. But before we wrap up, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little about the end of season patch and the changes to the Skip Barber car. Officially or not, it's been called New Time Model 7 Revision A and seeks to address the challenging changes to the car that we all drove throughout the 2019 Season 2 series. Corey, have you had any chance to drive the Skippy after the patch, and do you have any initial thoughts?
Well, it's definitely going to take a little bit of relearning, Alex. I've come, like most people, accustomed to the way that Time Model 7 was last season. So for me, it's a little bit of a readjustment period, being a more of an inexperienced driver, trying to unlearn a lot of things I learned last season and try and recall some of the skills that I'd gained in the seasons previous, with the car being a little bit more taily and a little bit more unstable, to try and produce that into getting some speed. I know you've had probably a lot more practice this week than I have, but that was my first initial thought. I went and practiced out at Monza because that's where we just were last week. So that's where I felt the most comfortable at the time.
Yeah, mate, I've done quite a few laps. I'm somewhat withholding judgment at the moment. The more I drive it, the more I become accustomed to the changes, the more I'm becoming comfortable with them. There's a lot of positive talk in the community, which from my perspective is great. A lot of the top end of town who abandoned the series last season have been popping up in the practice sessions throughout week 13. Big shout out to Philippe Lebert for hosting simultaneous Skippy practice sessions 24/7 all this week. A massive contribution to the community that has been. Thank you, Philippe. Whilst I'll reserve my broader comments probably for a later podcast episode, initially I was somewhat terrified by the changes as I hit the track for my first few laps off the back of what was my most successful Skippy season ever, no doubt largely due to the clear out at the top end of town. The car on track after the patch immediately drove so very differently. It really has been a process of rewiring my brain, similar to what you mentioned, Corey. No doubt, though, many of the folks that were complaining about having to retrain their muscle memory in the car are nodding their heads in silent "I told you so" fashion. They were right, of course, but I was be damned if I was going to give up my Skippy racing last season. But for now, I can appreciate why people liked last season. I can understand why people didn't, and why those same people are singing the praises of this latest iteration. Do I think it's perfect? By no means. Do I think it's an improvement? Most likely, but for me, I want some more time in the car before I really commit to things, because I want to give it a chance. I think there are still some issues, but I'm confident that things are moving in the right direction and will continue to do so. In the end, I love my Skippy racing. I'll be out there on track, scratching around for the results as I usually do, and hopefully enjoying it all the more. All right, Corey, thank you for joining me for this SNL wrap-up episode. For those who don't know, Corey is an avid streamer on Twitch. Corey, tell the folks at home where they can find you.
Yeah, you guys can find me at twitch.tv/CoreyHasNoLife13. We will put up a mature content warning. I don't have the nicest of language there, as you would find here in the Top Split podcast or even in the Top Split broadcast. But we have some fun. And that's generally what matters, Alex.
That's it. No PG rating there, of course, with Corey. And I'll put those details up along with all things Top Split in the description of the podcast below. And of course, we will be back in this coming season for season 17 of the Sunday Night Lights. You'll be able to find us and the action live each week on Sunday night of this 12-week season on the Top Split TV Twitch channel at 9:15 p.m. Australian Eastern Time, which is GMT plus 10 at the moment. With replays uploaded to the Top Split YouTube channel after each and every race. Please join us also in the Top Split Discord community, which is where we do the broadcast race from. And if you are driving, it's also where we do the post-race interviews. And we love to hear the on-track experiences of the drivers. You can also find us on Facebook, and all the podcast episodes are on thetopsplit.com. All those details will be in the podcast description below, as always. A final word of thanks to the Top Split and Sunday Night Lights communities. We've had another great season, our best one yet. We really appreciate your ongoing support on and off the track. And for me, as I've said so many times today, seeing the people out on the track enjoying this hobby is why I do it. And it's so tremendously satisfying that we have such a strong community that supports this series. So thank you to those who race, those who join us for the broadcasts. We really do appreciate it. For now, though, I've been your host, Alex McKellar, and on behalf of the chaotic one, Mr. Corey Steinhauser, thank you for joining us, and until next we meet, ciao for now.